In this opening of On the Orator, Cicero speaks on the absolute breadth of knowledge required for the art of speaking, emphasizing the wide range of qualities the ideal orator should have. Book 1. As I frequently contemplate and call to mind the times of old, those men in general seem to me, brother Quintus, to have been supremely happy, who, while they were distinguished with honours and the glory of their actions in the best days of the Republic, were enabled to pursue such a course of life, that they could continue either in employment without danger, or in retirement with dignity. To myself also, there was a time when I thought that a season for relaxation, and for turning my thoughts again to the noble studies once pursued by both of us, would be fairly allowable, and be conceded by almost everyone. If the infinite labour of forensic business and the occupations of ambition should be brought to a close, either by the completion of my course of honours, or by the decline of age. Such expectations, with regard to my studies and designs, not only the severe calamities resulting from public events, but a variety of our own private troubles, have disappointed. For in that period, which seemed likely to offer most quiet and tranquillity, the greatest pressures of trouble and the most turbulent storms arose. Nor to our wishes and earnest desires has the enjoyment of leisure been granted, to cultivate and revive between ourselves those studies to which we have from early youth been addicted. For at our first entrance into life we fell amidst the disturbance of all ancient order. In my consulship we were involved in struggles and the hazard of everything, and all the time since that consulship we have had to make opposition to those waves, which, prevented by my efforts from causing a general destruction, have abundantly recoiled upon myself. Yet amidst the difficulties of affairs and the shortness of time, I shall endeavour to gratify my love of literature, and whatever leisure the malice of enemies, the legal cases of friends, or the public service will allow me, I shall chiefly devote to writing. As to you, brother, I shall not fail to obey your exhortations and entreaties, for no person can have more influence with me than you have, both by authority and affection. Here the recollection of an old tradition must be revived in my mind, a recollection not indeed sufficiently distinct, but adapted, I think, so far to reply to what you ask, that you may understand what opinions the most famous and eloquent men entertained respecting the whole art of oratory. For you wish, as you have often said to me, since what went abroad rough and incomplete from our own notebooks, when we are young boys or young men, is scarcely worthy of my present standing in life, and that experience which I have gained from so many and such important cases as I have pleaded, that something more polished and complete should be offered by me on the same subjects, and you are at times inclined to dissent from me in our disputations on this matter, inasmuch as I consider eloquence to be the offspring of the accomplishments of the most learned men. But you think it must be regarded as independent of elegant learning, and attributable to a peculiar kind of talent and practice. Often, indeed, as I review in thought the greatest of mankind, and those endowed with the highest abilities, it has appeared to me worthy of inquiry what was the cause that a greater number of persons have been admirable in every other pursuit than in speaking. For whichever way you direct your view and thought and contemplation, you will see numbers excellent in every type, not only of the humble, but even of the highest arts. Who indeed is there that, if he would measure the qualifications of illustrious men, either by the usefulness or magnitude of their actions, would not prefer a general to an orator? Yet who doubts that we can produce, from this city alone, almost innumerable excellent commanders, while we can number scarcely a few eminent in speaking. There have been many also in our own memory, and more in that of our fathers, and even of our forefathers, who had abilities to rule and govern affairs of state by their counsel and wisdom, while for a long period no tolerable orators were found, or scarcely one in every age. But lest anyone should think that the art of speaking may be more justly be compared with other pursuits, which depend upon abstruse studies and a varied field of learning, than with the merits of a general or the wisdom of a prudent senator. Let him turn his thoughts to those particular sciences themselves, and contemplate who and how many have flourished in them, as he will thus be best enabled to judge how great a scarcity of orators there is, and has ever been. It does not escape your observation that what the Greeks call philosophy is esteemed by the most learned men, the originator, as it were, and the parent of all the arts which merits praise. Philosophy, I say, in which it is difficult to enumerate how many distinguished men there have been, and of how great knowledge, variety, and comprehensiveness in their studies, men who have not confined their labours to one province separately, but have embraced whatever they could master either by scientific investigations or by process of reasoning. Who is ignorant in how great obscurity of matter, in how abstruse, manifold, and subtle an art they who are called mathematicians are engaged? Yet in that pursuit so many men have arrived at excellence, that not one seems to have applied himself to the science in earnest, without attaining in it whatever he desired. Who has ever devoted himself wholly to music? Who has ever given himself up to the learning which they profess, who are called grammarians, without grasping in knowledge and understanding the whole substance and matter of those sciences, though almost boundless? Of all those who have engaged in the most liberal pursuits and departments of such sciences, I think I may truly say that a smaller number of eminent poets have arisen than of men distinguished in any other branch of literature. And in the whole multitude of the learned, among whom there rarely appears one of the highest excellence, there will be found, if you will but make a careful review of your own list and that of the Greeks, far fewer good orators than good poets. This ought to seem the more wonderful, as attainments in other sciences are drawn from obscure and hidden springs. But the whole art of speaking lies before us, and is concerned with common usage and the custom and language of all men. So that while in other things that is most excellent, which is most remote from the knowledge and understanding of the illiterate, it is in speaking even the greatest of faults to vary from the ordinary kind of language and the practice sanctioned by universal reason. Yet it cannot be said with truth, either that more are devoted to the other arts, or that they are excited by greater pleasure, more abundant hope, or more ample rewards. For to say nothing of Greece, which was always desirous to hold the first place in eloquence, and Athens, that inventress of all literature, in which the utmost power of oratory was both discovered and brought to perfection. In this very city of ours, assuredly, no studies were ever pursued with more earnestness than those tending to the acquisition of eloquence. For when our empire over all nations was established, and after a period of peace had secured tranquillity, there was scarcely a youth ambitious of praise who did not think that he must strive, with all his endeavours, to attain the art of speaking. For a time, indeed, as being ignorant of all method, and as thinking there was no course of exercise for them, or any precepts of art. They attained what they could by the single force of genius and thought. But afterwards, having heard the Greek orators, and gained an acquaintance with Greek literature, and procured instructors, our countrymen were inflamed with an incredible passion for eloquence. The magnitude, the variety, the multitude of all kind of cases, excited them to such a degree that to learning which each had acquired by his individual study, frequent practice which was superior to all precepts of all masters, was at once added. There were then, as there are now also now, the highest inducements offered for the cultivation of this study, in regard to public favour, wealth, and dignity. The abilities of our countrymen, as we may judge from many particulars, far excelled those of the men of every other nation. For which reasons, who would not justly wonder that in the records of all ages, times, and states, so small a number of orators should be found. But the art of eloquence is something greater, and collected from more sciences and studies than people imagine. For who can suppose that, amid the greatest multitudes of students, the utmost abundance of masters, the most eminent geniuses among men, the infinite variety of cases, the most ample rewards offered to eloquence, there is any other reason to be found for the small number of orators than the incredible magnitude and difficulty of the art? A knowledge of a vast number of things is necessary, without which volubility of words is empty and ridiculous. Speech itself is to be formed, not merely by choice, but by careful construction of words, and all the emotions of the mind, which nature has given to man, must be intimately known. For all the force and art of speaking must be employed in allaying or exciting the feelings of those who listen. To this must be added a certain portion of grace and wit, learning worthy of all well-bred man, and quickness and brevity in replying as well as attacking, accompanied with a refined decorum and urbanity. Besides, the whole of antiquity and a multitude of examples is to be kept in the memory. Nor is the knowledge of laws in general, or of the civil law in particular, to be neglected. And why need I add any remarks on delivery itself, which is to be ordered by action of body, by gesture, by look, and by modulation and variation of the voice, the great power of which, alone and in itself, the comparatively trivial art of actors and the stage proves, on which though all bestow their utmost labour to form their look, voice, and gesture, who knows not how few there are, and have ever been, to whom we can attend with patience. What can I say of that repository of all things, the memory, which, unless it be made the keeper of the matter and words, that are the fruits of thought and invention, all the talents of the orator, we see, though they may be of the highest degree of excellence, will be of no avail. Let us then cease to wonder what is the cause of the scarcity of good speakers, since eloquence results from all those qualifications, in each of which singly is a great merit to labour successfully. And let us rather exhort our children and others whose glory and honour is dear to us, to contemplate in their minds the full magnitude of the object, and not to trust that they can reach the height at which they aim, by the aid of precepts, masters, and exercises that they are all now following, but to understand that they must adopt others of a different character. In my opinion, indeed, no man can be an orator possessed of every praiseworthy accomplishment, unless he has attained the knowledge of everything important, and of all liberal arts, for his language must be ornate and copious from knowledge, since, Unless there be beneath the surface matter understood and felt by the speaker, oratory becomes an empty and almost puerile flow of words. Yet I will not lay so great a burden upon orators, especially our own, amid so many occupations of public and private life, as to think it allowable for them to be ignorant of nothing, although the qualifications of an orator, and his very profession of speaking well, seem to undertake and promise that he can discourse gracefully and copiously on whatever subject is promised to him. But because of this, I doubt not, will appear to most people an immense and infinite undertaking. And because I see that the Greeks, men amply endowed not only with genius and learning, but also with leisure and application, have made a kind of partition of the arts, and have not singly laboured in the whole circle of oratory, but have separated from the other parts of rhetoric that department of eloquence, which is used in the forum, on trials, or in deliberations, and have left this species only to the orator. I shall not embrace in these books more than has been attributed to this kind of speaking by the almost unanimous consent of the greatest men, after much examination and discussion of this subject. And I shall repeat, not a series of precepts drawn from the infancy of our old and boyish learning, but matters which I have heard were formerly argued in a discussion among some of our countrymen who were of the highest eloquence, and of the first rank in every kind of dignity. Not that I despise the instructions which the Greek rhetoricians and teachers have left us, but, as they are already public and within the reach of all, and can neither be set forth more elegantly, nor explained more clearly by my interpretation, you will, I think, excuse me, my brother, if I prefer to the Greeks the authority of those to whom the utmost merit in eloquence has been allowed by our own countrymen.